Story 1.
Me, 27 male, fiancé, 26 female, call her L. My father, 52 male, call him B. My mother, 50 female, call her R. Like many who've had something like this happen, I never thought something like this would happen to me, but here we are. I've never used Reddit, but I've seen stories from here on TikTok, so I thought I'd give this a shot for any advice you all could give me. From listening to some other stories, you all like backstory. I'll try and be as clear and precise as I can, but it's only been a week, so if I start to lose it during the telling of this, I'm sorry. Elle and I met in her freshman year of college. We were both dorm in the same building where we eventually met. We later found out we lived 2 towns away from each other, so whenever we went home, I let her drive with me. It was only added like 20 minutes, so it was no big deal. After multiple trips and hanging out at school, we started to date. I have a close-knit family, as did she, so we told our families right away. I had met hers plenty of times when dropping her off, but it was nothing more than an introduction and exchanging pleasantries. Both of our families accepted each other with open arms and our relationship grew. I was a year ahead of her, so when I graduated, I went home where I was offered a good job with great pay. I visited her at school whenever I got the chance, and whenever she came home, we would make time for each other. After she graduated, she moved in with me as both of our jobs were in the city near where we grew up. Like me, she was offered a position at the company she works at now with great pay. After living together for about 3 years, I proposed, and we have been planning our wedding since. Now onto the part you're all reading for. Looking back, there was plenty of things I overlooked that I just wrote off, thinking my father was just trying to welcome my ex into our family. Things like my father calling her all the time, and if I was around, they would just tell me they were talking about the upcoming family party or something along those lines. One time Elle was in the shower and her phone rang. I seen it was my dad, so I answered. When he realized it was me, he sounded both upset and surprised that I picked up. I then asked what's up. He responded that he wanted to talk to Elle about my mother's birthday that was in a week, and after a minute we ended the call. Even typing this out now, I feel like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. On the day I found out, it was like any other day. Elle had Thursdays off, so she made breakfast for both of us. When I set out for work, she gave me a kiss and told me to have a great day. During my drive to work, I realized I had forgotten some paperwork I would need for a meeting I had at 3 p.m. I shrugged it off and told myself I would just go home at lunch to get it. Elle texted me throughout the day talking about all the casual stuff a couple talks about, like what do you want for dinner? I did the laundry, do you want me to hang it up for you, blah blah blah. I didn't think it necessary to text her I was coming home for lunch, so when it came around, I just left work and went home. When I got home, I noticed a car that looked like my father's in our parking lot, but I didn't think anything of it and just parked and went into our building. When I opened the door, I was met with a scene out of a movie where a man comes home early and catches his spouse cheating, such a cliché. There was a trail of clothes, both his and hers, leading to my bedroom, and the sound of faint moans echoed through my apartment. I stood at the door in utter shock. My brain was a mix of rage, sadness and disgust, but if you were a fly on my wall, you would see what looked like a statue. I just couldn't move. When I finally snapped to, not knowing how much time had passed, I took out my phone to record. I picked up all the clothes that were on the floor and threw them into the hall of the building. After, I filmed the walk to my bedroom. The door was open. I stood in the doorway filming for about a minute, then flipped on the lights. They both jumped at the sudden light and looked at me, and to my utter shock, it was my father in the bed with her. After the initial stun, my father noticed I was recording and started to panic, trying to find anything to cover himself and telling me to stop recording. He found a towel and wrapped it around himself and started to walk toward me. I told him, if you don't want to get hurt, stop coming to me. He either didn't care or didn't hear me and reached for my phone. I hit him square on the jaw. His head bounced off the door and slumped to the ground. Elle shrieked. I aimed the camera at Elle and said, concerned about your sex buddy, but nothing to say to your fiancé? My father woke up after about a minute nap, and I told them I just needed to come pick something up for work, so I'm heading back now. If either of you are here when I get back, I'll send this video to everyone you know. I ended the video, looked at my dad, who was still coming to, and said, you're dead to me. You're no longer my father, but you might want to go home and talk to mom, because I'll be talking to her very soon. I sat in my car for a while until one of the bosses at work called to ask where I was. I told her I was on my way back right now. When I got to her office to hand her the paperwork, I must have looked awful because she started asking what was wrong with me. I told her it was nothing and I'd be okay. I could see her scanning me up and down, and she noticed some blood on my collar and stood up, rushed to me and said, you're bleeding. I looked down and said it was my father's. She looked confused, so I pulled out my phone and showed her the video. She watched it in its entirety. She was introduced to Elle a few times, but never my father. She sat there silent for a moment until it finally clicked that my fiancé was cheating on me, but not only was she cheating, it was with my father. She asked if there was anything she could do, suggesting I take some time off, but I told her I can't go back there right now. That I just need a minute and I'd be fine for the meeting, and I have another shirt in my office. The meeting went over fine. I put on a smile for everyone like nothing had happened. My boss came up to me after the meeting and asked how I could do that, but I just said I don't know and went to my office. I then came home, and I was alone for the first time in a very long time. Thank you for reading. I'm sorry I carried on so much, but it was therapeutic getting everything down. I just don't know what to do. I defiantly need to get the hell out of this apartment. I just can't live here anymore, and there's no possible way I'm sleeping in that bed. I know not only do I have to go get checked out for STDs, but I think I broke something in my hand.
Update.
Wow. Hello everyone, I didn't expect to come back to Reddit and have this much support. I didn't really plan to update at all. I just wanted to put what had happened out there and hopefully get some advice. After I wrote down all that happened, I closed my computer and kind of fell into a depression. After I posted, it hit me like a train. To the ones who think it's fake, I wish I was this creative. I'd write books instead of working a 9 to 5. I'll try to reply more on this post. I just logged back on, and it was honestly too much to try and reply to every comment. Just know I read through most of them, and I truly appreciate everyone's inputs, both negative and positive. So, the day after I posted, I tried to get into contact with my mother, but none of my calls were connecting. I wanted to see if she would get lunch with me, and I'd tell her everything. After about a dozen tries, I decided to get into my car and go to my mother's house. She needed to know what happened as soon as possible, even if talking about was going to make it hurt all over again. During the drive, I thought about what I would say and how I would say it. That made me start to panic. I had to pull over twice to throw up. It's not every day you have to tell your mom that her husband is screwing your fiancé. I pulled into the driveway and sat in my car for a moment to calm down and gather my thoughts. I was in my car for a few minutes when my mother threw her front door open, so I stepped out of my car. She started cursing at me, saying how dare I come to her home after I hit my father for trying to break up a fight between Elle and I. She called me every name in the book and called me an abuser. She told me I needed to leave since Elle isn't ready to forgive me yet, and that if she's smart she hopefully never will. Yes, apparently my father took Elle to my family's home and told my mom that Elle and I argued, and when my father tried to spot it, I hit him. She continued on for a while until I finally snapped and said, "Really, Mom? Because your husband has sex with my fiancé, that's why I hit him, and if you can't take my word for it, I have a video, I'll send it to you. But because my own mother can talk to me like this, don't expect to see me again. I don't want to hear your apology when you finally figure out that you're just as shit of a mom as my piece of shit father." Her face dropped. She looked like what I must have looked like when I first walked into my apartment and caught them. I pulled out my phone and sent her the video. My mom took hers out and turned it on. She pulled up the video and watched up until the part where I turn on the light. She then put her phone down. She looked up at me, but I turned and went into my car. I backed out of her driveway. I looked at her before I took off, and she was in tears. My heart felt for her, but too much was said during that fight for me to pull back in and forgive her. When I got home, I started clearing everything out of my apartment that had to do with Elle or my family. I boxed all of Elle's things up and put them next to the front door. Legally this has been her place of residence, so I can't technically kick her out. Her name isn't on the lease. Also, she's the type of person who shies away from conflict, and if she returns other than to pick her things up, there will be plenty of conflict. Anything that had to do with my parents I boxed up and put into storage. Like I said in my first post, we were a very close family, but I've never had a problem cutting toxic people out of my life. I texted Elle's parents and told them calling off the engagement and told them she's been cheating on me. I thanked them for everything they've done for me. Our relationship was still building, but they were kind and supportive of me, so this just added more hurt to the mix. I finished by asking if they would come pick up all of her belongings. I haven't gotten a response from them yet, but I'm hoping they come grab her things, so Elle doesn't have a reason to come back here.
My opinion. Glad you found out about it before wedding. Don't blame your mother. She is the victim of this as well. When you arrived, she didn't know any truth, so be gentle to her. Your father lied to her. Why she wouldn't believe him in this situation before you told her the truth? Say sorry to her and give her as much attention and care as she will need, because she will need you. Cool down a bit and reach out to her. The real villain here is your father. He destroyed both families, his and the one you were building with your fiancé. And he tried to destroy your relationship with your mother as well. Take some time and think about it. I would advise you to reconsider your relationship with your mother and take care of her. What are your thoughts about this story? Let me know in the comment box below. Story 2.
I, 39 male, just caught my wife, 38 female, of 14 years, together 17 years, cheating on me with her district manager of Aramark Refreshments for about 2 years now. Before I get into details, there is a backstory to all of this. I want you all to get a full picture and decide if she was entitled to cheat or did I just pay off a debt I owed. In 2012 I took my wife to get her tonsils removed at the hospital. They gave me her belongings as she couldn't take them inside surgery room. Her phone kept buzzing. I took it upon myself to see who was blowing her up and I read tons of inappropriate emails with another man at work. She was reading 50 Shades of Grey at the time and was referring to the man as her Christian Grey, something she would call me. I was pissed and wanted answers, but unfortunately, she couldn't talk after surgery, so on the drive home I handed her a piece of paper with a pen to answer all the questions I had. And she wrote, it was nothing but flirting. I grabbed my 2-year-old son and briefcase of clothes and went from CA to AS on a mini weekend getaway with my support team, my best friend and his wife, to stay away from her for a while. Once back she informed me that she deleted her email, and it won't happen again. Fast forward a few years and I just could never get over the fact that she would betray me the way she did. I wanted to get even and felt that it was the only way to move forward from it. I met a client who showed me some attention. We started texting, and while my wife would go out with her friends and party, I would secretly leave my son with my mom and go see this woman. We had an affair and eventually fell in love with this other woman. After about 9 months, my affair partner tells me she's pregnant. First thing that came to my head was playing Usher's confession song and actually confessing to my wife, which I did. She took it pretty well as she told me she had an idea, and that God was preparing her for that moment. I told her that I wanted a divorce and would like to start a new life with this other woman. She told me that we can work things out, to go to church more and get therapy from the pastor, and all should be great. How could I say no to that? I had to break the news to the pregnant AP, who was under the impression that we were going to start a new life together. The bad news that we weren't. Fast forward a few months and I find out my wife is now pregnant. 3 months apart from AP. She wanted to feel more secured over the other woman, so she basically forced us to have another child together. It's December 2014 and I went from having 1 kid to 3 kids in a blink of an eye. It's been crazy, but I'm there for all my kids. Now let's jump over to the present time. My wife and I have had our fair share of bumps on the road, but I truly love the way we are raising our beautiful children. I have come a long way and have been faithful and committed to rebuilding our relationship. I go out of town for work from time to time as she does. Just found out that for the last 2 years, she's been having this affair with her boss. Every happy hour event after work, every time she spent doing overtime, every trip to San Diego or Valentine's Day in Portland. He was there keeping her warm in a hotel room. Here's how I found out. She went for drinks after work and I asked, "What time do you plan on being home?" She tells me 9 p.m. 9 p.m. comes around and she's nowhere in sight. I call her and nothing. I get a text with a picture of her girl coworker and it's informing me that she's just grabbing a few more drinks before heading out. I found it so weird that she could text me but can't give me a call. I zoom into the picture into a napkin that was on the table and see where she's at. I drive 45 minutes from home to look for her and there she is. At the bar with her boss with his arms around her. I walk up and they were both shocked to see me. She was quick to say, "Okay, bye." I'm like, "Bye, but I just got here, did I interrupt something?" She proceeds to tell me she's closed up her tab and she's leaving. I stay with her boss. The boss is drunk at this point and he's talking to me about his wife. He tells me that she doesn't pay any attention to him and how they do whatever they want. This is the first time I meet this guy and he's getting personal. He asks me if I've ever caught my wife cheating and I proceed to let him know that I haven't, but if I do, it wouldn't be a pretty sight. He orders another drink and I see my wife calling him on his phone multiple times. I found that very odd. In the middle of his drink, he gets up and leaves for what I thought was the bathroom, but he actually leaves the bar. I took off home and have tons of questions for my wife. Her response was, "I'm sorry, I should have told you he was with us as well. I've never been the jealous type and a friend told me to check my phone records." My heart dropped when I found out she's been talking to him Monday to Friday after work for 15 to 30 minutes at a time. I confronted her with all the phone bills extending to 2 years ago and she informed me that after work she has end-of-day reporting to do and he needs those numbers to report to his boss. It was such a good lie. Keep in mind she's not salary and clocks in and out, so in our point of view, reporting numbers after clocking out would be considered illegal. I needed proof of their conversations, but how? I decided to record their conversations. I'm not going to mention how I did it, but once I heard what was said, my heart broke into a million pieces. She had conversations with her own cousin talking about how much he brings excitement to her life, and it's not only the sex but how funny and goofy he is. She talked about how dumb I was to believe the end-of-day calls were real. She said how they would have to lay low for a while, and where there's a will, there's a way, and then there's the conversation between the two of them, where they talked about how much they loved one another and how they make each other feel. Straight caught. I knew I was furious but didn't know what to do. Do I go to their hour? My wife just got a promotion, should I tell them it's because she's having an affair with her boss? I did the only thing I could think of. Contacted his wife. I did a ton of research with some help of course from a good buddy that loves drama. Contacted his wife on LinkedIn and waited for her to call. She did, and I told her everything I knew. We put dates together and they've been having a blast for years now while we both were being played for fools. We did a 4-way call, but they denied it all even after the recordings. They both finally came clean. Now I have to ask myself, do I stay for the kids or leave her because my debts from my wrongdoings have been paid? She's begging for me back, but I've moved out and pick up the kids to take them to school every morning. She still works under him and swears it won't happen again, but how can I trust that after 2 years of loving another man? She let him in her heart and pants. Is this my chance to leave her and start a fresh new life, or do I stick around to make sure my kids grow up with an undivided family? Is there hope for this toxic, unhealthy marriage? Should I get the district manager fired for his wrongdoings in all of this? What should I do next? I know 2 wrongs did not make a right. I'm here for advice if anyone has successfully kept their family together for the sake of their children.
My opinion. Well, you did a wrong thing back in the day. I do not understand why you decided to continue the marriage if you wanted to leave, but it is what it is. Now things with your wife really got out of control. Wrong on wrong really doesn't make it right. Now this is not about evening up a score. I don't believe they will not be going to end, and you know it as well. Now she will say whatever you want to hear. I believe you should move on. And, just in case, get a DNA test for your youngest child. Who knows, probably she made this baby trap back then on purpose. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe on my channel.